Good morning, grade 12, and welcome to another life orientation lesson online. Okay, so today we're looking at page 189 in the textbook, looking at human factors that cause ill health. So the whole discussion over the next week or two is going to be about lifestyle diseases, which we'll talk about later, but we're talking about the fact that humans and what we do can result in health problems, okay? So the first few things, excuse me, may appear to be they're actually more sort of accidental in nature, but they cause health problems. And sometimes it's caused by us, even though it is an accident. So it discusses on page 189, you can just see it says ill health. We all know what that means. Health problems could be anything from getting sexually transmitted illnesses to getting sick in any other way, via an accident, having, damaging your bones, not being able to walk properly. That's now a health problem. There are many things that can cause health problems. So it discusses three specific things here. It talks about accidents. So obviously, if you're involved in an accident of any kind, it can create health problems for you. So in a car accident, you might not be able to walk properly again. You might have brain damage. Okay, these are all health problems. Okay, let's pray and hope that this doesn't happen to any of us. Well, maybe 2 years ago or 3 years ago, just before the pandemic, in fact, the one day I was checking some chlorine out to see if I didn't even know what I was doing. I just opened the bottle of the chlorine and I looked down, and as I looked down, this gust of chlorine came into my face and I breathed it in like this, and that created some health problems for me. I couldn't breathe. I actually thought at that time, I thought I had to go to hospital, but luckily I was okay. But it can be quite damaging. You can permanently damage your lungs. There's an accident that creates health problems. People that do daredevil stunts, maybe jumping off of a bridge into a dam, or, riding bicycles and doing, backflips and all that kind of stuff. I'm not against those things, but obviously they can be accidents, and accidents can create health problems. Then on page 190, it talks about crisis. So it talks about two things here, crisis and disaster. So you need to know the difference between those two things. A crisis is something that happens to a specific group of people. Okay, so like, for example, in your family, if your family was to get divorced, your parents, that is a crisis. All right. So it's different to a disaster, because a disaster is a lot more widespread. So for example, an earthquake, a tsunami, the coronavirus pandemic, these things are disasters. It has a huge effect on a great scale, whereas a crisis is more sort of localized. So a crisis can cause health problems. So for example, let's say your family does go through a divorce. You may suffer from mental illnesses as a result. You could suffer from depression and stress and anxiety that can create health problems. Okay, and apart from that also, let's say the major breadwinner of your family is no longer around, and your family doesn't have money to pay the bills, to live in a healthy place, to eat healthy food. So all of these things can affect your health. Then disasters, obviously, an earthquake, a tsunami, the coronavirus pandemic. A few years ago in Krugersdorp, there was a giant hailstorm that caused the roof of Key West Mall to collapse because the hail was too heavy, and that is a disaster. All right, so luckily no one was hurt, but if people were squashed underneath that obviously affects your health. Then on page 191, it talks about a few other things. So it says psychological factors that cause ill health. So psychological means within your mind. So from within your own mind, you can create health problems for yourself. So let's look at, we already mentioned depression. So when a person is depressed, obviously psychologically and mentally they're unhealthy at that time. However, being depressed can lead to other issues like physical health problems. So you're depressed, you don't eat healthily because you're depressed. You don't exercise, you don't care about yourself. Having self-esteem issues can create health problems. People with self-esteem issues are not as concerned about whether they're going to use drugs or eat healthily. They're more likely to get involved in risky behavior of various kinds, and that can affect their health. Okay, so psychological factors can cause ill health. Then on the bottom of page 191, it talks about social factors. So these are social problems in society. Alcoholism. All right. It gives an example there of fetal alcohol syndrome. So that's a situation where a mother who is an alcoholic and is carrying a baby. When that baby is born, the baby has defects as a result of, of the mother's alcoholism. So that's an example. But obviously, lots of issues in society can create health problems. Crime, if you're a victim of crime, it can affect your health. If you get involved in drug abuse, it affects your health, so on and so forth. So these are all social issues. Sexual issues, society and social problems results in people being promiscuous, which then obviously results in sexual health problems. On page 192 at the top, it talks about religious factors that cause ill health. Now, this may sound a bit strange, and this is not judgmental in any way, but there are sometimes religious beliefs and things that people follow that can create health problems. So, for example, fasting. I fast, and I know many of you fast, but I think in a lot of our religions, there are rules, So, for example, a young child, I believe, I was talking to some of the Islamic families during Ramadan now, and some of the moms were telling me, no, they don't let their young children fast, or they fast for half a day because it's not healthy for them. You see, so there are rules that allow it to be healthier. But sometimes people will be so strict about certain things that it can damage your health, all right? So I think Ramadan's not a huge issue because people still eat when it's not sunlight hours. But there are other things. So, for example, in, a Jehovah's Witness people actually don't believe in using medicine, some of them. They don't believe in going to the doctor, so they have to heal themselves. Now a lot of people have strong religious beliefs about things like vaccines, so they believe that the vaccine is the mark of the beast, and so they don't want to take the vaccine. So then they think, don't worry about that. I don't believe that, just in case any of you are thinking. But so there are lots of people with intense religious beliefs that then affect their health, okay? So, and we've had examples in South Africa, the church where the pastor would spray doom onto his people and say, no, you will survive this in the name of Jesus. But that's just abusing the religion. But sometimes people follow those things, and it ends up causing health problems. And then the last one there is cultural practices that cause ill health. Similarly to religious factors, there could be cultural things. So maybe in certain cultures, they don't want to eat a certain thing, or they do want to eat a certain thing, or there are things that they're supposed to do that could be dangerous. An example I have is a friend of mine. After he matriculated, he went to go do, excuse me, he went to go do initiation in the Eastern Cape. So he's a Xhosa boy, and he went to go do initiation. So for those of you who don't know, it's a male circumcision rite of passage where boys go and they live on the mountain. It can happen when they're like 13, and then someone circumcises them, the chief of the village, and it's supposed to represent coming of age, right? So there are some good things about it, but there are a lot of cultural practices that some of the tribes do that are dangerous. So for example, for my friend, the way that he paid for this was with a bottle of brandy, and the guy who did the procedure was a drunk old man who used the same knife on every single boy, right? And it wasn't sterilized. So that is obviously quite dangerous. So for my friend, he actually nearly died as a result of this thing, and it's quite sad. So there are certain cultural things that could lead to health problems. Okay, so now I'm not saying, please don't hear what I'm not saying here. We're not saying that you should go against your culture and you should go against your religion, but we need to be wise and consider, where do these things cross the lines of what is actually healthy. And sometimes people act on things because they believe it's right, but they haven't thought it through. They take religious beliefs and texts, but they don't consider it very carefully about what did God actually want here, and where does this come from? Some religious beliefs that cause people to do unhealthy things are actually not religious at all, they're religious as in made by people, not commanded by God, right? And so there are lots of things like that, cultural and religious practices that could cause ill health. Now on page 193 and 194, there are some examples of various cultural and religious practices. So you can just read through those and just know what they are. So there's wife inheritance, male child preference, where in some cultures they sell female children into slavery essentially because they want male children, or they abort them. Circumcision itself is not wrong, but like I explained with my friend's story, it can be very dangerous. Female genital mutilation and cutting, in some cultures they do this to women so that they do not enjoy sexual pleasure in any way, and it's done so that it keeps them for their husband, so to speak, right? It's not a very good practice, and it can create a lot of health problems, of course. Wife inheritance is in some cultures where a man will inherit his brother's wife if his brother dies. So there are reasons behind that. It's more about looking after the family because no one is there to look after the family. But obviously some men then will rape those women, which can create problems. Culture of silence talks about the idea that in a lot of cultures, sex is a sort of a taboo topic where people don't speak about it. So children who have suffered any kind of sexual abuse, or they're trying to learn about sex, they are not allowed to talk about it. You know, I had a situation in the one school that I taught in once where this young girl, she came to school and she'd been abused by her father. And when the school found out about it, the reality was that she came home to tell her father that she had been raped. And because in the culture that her father comes from, speaking about sex is taboo, he then beat her, right? So, and you know, that's obviously dangerous. It creates health problems. People are at risk. Nutritional harm, that's just obviously as a result of people's nutritional beliefs and stuff, that they might harm themselves or their children or so on and so forth. Okay, then it talks about different knowledge perspectives. So a knowledge perspective just means this. It means people have different perspectives and understanding of knowledge around the world. You know, so if you look at the coronavirus pandemic right now and the reality of vaccines being rolled out, there are people with different perspectives on that. And from different people's perspectives, they have ideas about what they believe. And so that can affect people's health as well. So next time, ladies and gents, we're going to, so I think I'll do a live lesson on this on Zoom, where we talk about lifestyle diseases. It's quite an interesting topic. And most of it is stuff you probably know. And we'll have to relate it to how they may ask questions in life orientation, but it's important for you to know. You can use the notes that I've given you, already read through the topic just so that you get an understanding, and we'll go through that next time. Cheerio. Bye-bye.